Hello, everyone. Welcome back to stage. Today, I have a special guest, Malte Barth, founder and general partner at BITKRAFT, one of the biggest VCs in the gaming industry. Malte, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure. Thanks for all of you tuning in here.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about BITKRAFT, what you are doing? You have amazing investments before. Then I will go to my questions.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for giving me the stage on that. So we essentially entrepreneurs turned into investors over quite some time. So we've been in the trenches of building businesses ourselves for some time. And when that materialized into a few successes, we turned into investors because we wanted to put our gray hair and the learnings and some wisdom we accumulated over time and put it behind great new, fresh founders. And we essentially now invest out of our fourth fund. All in all, I think 70 or so investments across the board, which either is, and we specialized in gaming, esports, interactive entertainment, essentially. And so which is essentially studios like content, which is platforms and something we call horizontal technologies, so to say, which can, been built and, nurtured in gaming and then can scale into other categories. That's what we do. We have a global spans. We largely around US and West Coast, but strong in Europe. A few things in Asia going on. So we have clearly a global view, global network, but go local in our thesis when investing.
All right. Well, thank you for describing shortly. I will go with my first question. As you described, you don't only invest in game development companies, but you invest in ecosystem, the game ecosystem. What do you see as a value for the ecosystem, and what does the ecosystem need right now?
Yeah. So what we enjoy the most when we look into business plans or up and coming founding teams and founders is when the founders sort of take the boundaries, so to say, or the implicit assumption of what the games ecosystems is today, and they play with it, right? So they essentially start to change the paradigm. And what I would want to share or guide you with essentially is that, like, what we define today as gaming is a very sort of capsulated view of what an experience is supposed to be like, right? It's a game to start with, right? But when you really think of bigger, like what gaming did, gaming sort of enabled an entire 2 generations by now, and will even more so future generations, like generations post millennia, so to say, right? In using digital products per se, right? Which may be a game, which may be beyond a game, but look and feel and whatever come across a lot like a game, but they have different purposes, right? They essentially redefine different categories, right? Even though a lot of the things which we know defines gaming per se, whether it's look and feel, whether it's a UI, whether it's like an experience loop and so on and so forth, is very familiar to the audience, but like it taps into a very different thing, right? And that's something I'd like to encourage people to think almost bigger outside of the box of gaming only, right? When you think of, like, I'm giving you examples, like what's the future of work, right? What's the future of education? What's the future of finance when you would take a game or gaming sort of skill set, experience set, and go after such big categories and essentially redefine those categories, right?
Think future and see what you can redefine on the current system. Yeah. Adapt yourself
with what you as a founder know about how to build a game, right? And how to talk to an audience, right? Because I think the differentiator here is you have a specific inroad view insight into a audience, which maybe traditional brands or traditional service providers just don't. Like when I take an example, maybe I just don't want to name, but like if I take a big bank in New York or London and they the way they talk to like an entire generation may not be the right way to talk to them, right? And when I'm talking, I mean, I don't mean words. I don't mean like, you know, the pure message. I mean like the whole experience and how to engage, right? You know, why is an audience doing why they're doing it, right? So if you got figured that why out, like how do you go about serving on that why, right? So that starts with essentially the community in mind, builds on what the community wants, engages them very early on, and then from there on creates products, right? Which is almost like a philosophy in how to approach business and how to deliver digital experiences, if that makes sense, right?
Got it. You have more than 70 investments, and like as we talked, in the ecosystem, not just game development companies. But what are the metrics you are looking for before the investment?
That's a very good question. I mean, we as we are entrepreneurs ourselves, we've been building a lot of business ourselves. So you always, you know, we try to understand what this means, right? So there's not like this one box of like this is what it has to look like, right? And we've been, depending on stage, so we do invest even into a seed, pre-seed type of scenarios. It's not that we do like on a day-to-day, but we do it, we've done it, we will be doing it, right? And that has a lot to do with, obviously, who are you? Meaning, what is the quality of the team? What is the quality of the ambition, right? Can we find something that could be so big and changes so much of a paradigm? It could be massive, right, in size. What do we see in a founder or founder team, so to say? Sometimes you see certain qualities in them. It is important, I think, also to show your ability to deliver, right? Which is super critical. I mean, with the biggest visions out there, they're pretty much worthless unless you can really deliver against them. So showing and telling that you can deliver, that is sort of like when there is absolutely zero KPIs. There's nothing to track because essentially you have an idea, you are who you are with whatever else you've been building in the past, right? So when it comes to then more like seed scenarios where you may have built a prototype or like a vertical slice or like an MVP or an alpha or whatever, right? For us, it's super important to see like how do you engage with community, right? So like, are you like, let's say Discord, right? What sort of like, and what are the data signals you're getting from whatever seed community you're talking to on Discord? Who's that community? How do you engage with them? What insights you drag? Like, is there any, you know, is there community starting to engage on whatever you built already, right? And that's where the data set sort of starts building, right? Which is obviously on the top of the funnel, saying like how many of the users, you know, subscribed or like enter or sign up to the experience you built. So that's one. And then obviously the better the metrics are, the better they are. And then once they're in, depending on how much you've been building of an experience, right? Well, yeah, meaning like if there's even a case to track retention, then retention becomes obviously something we're very interested to see, essentially tiered by time, meaning like what's happening with day 1 and what's happening with maybe a day 7, day 30, and so on and so forth, right? To track on smaller sample sizes even, right? To just see if there's something there community likes, right? On top, I think it's always super important to keep also the qualitative sort of metrics in line. Like, what is it you've been discovering from communities, mostly about unserved needs, right? So like that's the obvious, and sometimes it just confirms the obvious, right? Which you know, you're serving what everybody sort of knows, but the interesting stuff comes about when you're serving a need that is not visible, right? A need you only discover in community. This is qualitative type of stuff, right? Which is you go like, hey, we've talked to whatever, we've done focus group interviews with our community or whatever type of sessions, and we discover there's A, B, and C, right? Which is unserved. People haven't gone after it really or try to serve against it. Like, and here's what we've did against it, and we can sort of create such proof points, even on small scale, that we're going to touch something other providers haven't before, right? And then yes, if it's going to get later, so meaning you'll be able to whatever launch an open beta or something. Then you're obviously getting into more of an engaged audience, which is obviously what does it do to your whatever traffic channels, right? That start to like virally, organically grow because the community likes it so much and they talk about it and they show and tell to their friends. So we had great examples of companies who like they haven't even fully launched their game, like they're still in an open beta, and they've gotten to 1-2 million of users, right, without a dime on marketing. That is obviously very strong. So you can clearly prove there's an interesting product market fit on what you do. And then if you start to monetize in some shape and form, then it becomes a bit of the picture of like, what's the short-term monetization look like? How do you think about long-term monetization? And then putting that into numbers to understand what is sort of conversion rate, what is an LTV may look like over time, and then how would an LTV essentially compare to like a cost per acquisition on a certain sort of marketing mix look like, right? That's sort of if I'm going to go down sort of that KPI set where we obviously very carefully listening and what like entrepreneurs see in the early stages of product generation.
If you summarize, it's not about numbers only. Like obviously the team is the first thing to check, and then maybe mobile game companies will have difficult time to relate, but talking with the community, getting the feedback and making an actionable plan. Okay, this is what I heard from the community, and then I can take the action. I'll just give a small example for the audience to visualize something. I met with one mobile game studio. They didn't have a game, but based on the game that they want to build, they made a cartoon. They have an Instagram page, and they had more than, I don't know, 20,000-30,000 people, maybe even more. And they were getting feedback from what they want to do, like what the audience wants in the game. So they were building exactly that game. Of course, the metrics will be completely different. I will bring this studio one time for our channel, but just for our audience to visualize, this is, I think, what you try to describe.
Yeah, and I think it is a lot also. I mean, after all, this is all a process, right? And I think it is very important before you have everything validated, and you cannot have everything validated. Otherwise, you would not be raising capital, right? Because then everything would be said and done, and there's no need for capital. So there's many things which sort of when you think of it as checkboxes, right? And then there's certain checkboxes you sort of validate by data, which takes risks out of the equation. So if you think of like our job here, we deploy capital in a very high risk scenario, right? And so, we balance that out, and we probably going to talk later a bit about valuation, because valuation is sort of like what we can play with and deal structure to cover for certain risk, which we happily take, right? We love risk, right? Don't get us wrong, but yet, it really helps your case either to get to a financing or to get to a financing that you're going to get over the line with terms you like, right? By showing and proving by empirical data to say, listen, this is what is not at risk. We don't have to discuss it. We can discuss about like what happens if we scale, right? So may that data point still hold true, or will that change assumptions? So it's going to be different. So that risk we're going to be having in the equation and have to live with, right? But the other thing I just wanted to say, opposed to the boxes you may or may not have already checked, so to say, it's for us, it's super important to see how you go about it, right? What is sort of your process of exploration, of discovery? How do you go about it? How did you end up with a checkbox, right? It's not just about the checkbox, right? So you say, hey, listen, this is how we went about it. This is like the product manager, and that's me. And then I engaged with that community, and I found the community in a certain way. And then I qualified that community in a certain way. And here's the methodology I use against it, right? And this is what we did when it comes to product management. This is sort of like whatever the feature set looks like we suggested. We started to delivering against it. It took us 4 weeks. We re-engaged with community. And this is what the data we got against it. So that tells a lot of a story on like how do you get to the data, and it tells a lot about how you go about it, right? Because it's always like in most of your worlds, it's mostly about learning, right? It's sort of if everything would already be clear, it wouldn't need you, right? So like the question, like tell us on how you learn, and that is obviously giving us a lot of comfort that whatever comes your way and whatever sort of puzzle you need to solve for, you could be learning for, and you can learning in a way so you can easily figure this out, and maybe faster than maybe other teams could, right?
Then this is what these are the things that you're looking for before the investment. But what are the expectations of the VC company from the studios, from the companies they invested? Obviously, you mentioned the learning, but what else? Like in communication, in execution level, in innovation level, what are those things?
So obviously taking it from the top. And I'm pretty sure I'm speak to any venture capital fund. Venture capital funds need to make money. So just to make sure that's out of the way, and that money is ideally it's a pretty high multiple, right? We're talking about something, I don't think it will be easy for us to underwrite a deal unless we can see 10x of a capital being returned, right? And that 10x is a lot of return, right? So it's not an easy job, so to say, right? But I want to bring this up because that's like the nature of the game, right? And then obviously make no mistake, if you deliver that kind of return, the founding team, the entrepreneurs will also make a ton of more money than the VC, right? But that's essentially why VCs sort of come to the table in the first place, right? Then I think the other one is obviously, it's about execution and also trust, right? And we know that any of the endeavors we're going to be in are risky explorations, right? It's not like there's a roadmap and people are just going to go through the autobahn and nothing can go wrong possibly, right? So we know there's going to be obstacles. We know there's going to be surprises. The question is always like, how do you go about it? Like, how do you interact? How do you learn? Are you transparent with whoever else around the table? Are you sharing difficulties enough to say, hey, listen, this is what we found. It was a surprise. This is how we tackle it. Here's plan A, here's plan B, which sort of builds essentially the trust level in the people around the table, setting out essentially certain whatever delivery frameworks, whether that's whatever 100-day plan or quarterly sort of OKR. So like this is what we want to do. This is how we broke it down to steps and like certain tasks, and then you can essentially start tracking against it, and that obviously helps a lot in transparency. And then do whatever time frame every quarter or whatnot. You essentially do you do a review, whether it's a board meeting or whatnot, to say, listen, this is what we wanted to do. This is what we've done. This is where things went well. This is where things didn't well, right? And this is what we learned. And here's how we change, right? So I think that dialogue is very, very important for people around the table, because it's a long journey, right? It's sort of like if you end up with investors in your business, you end up in 10-year plus relationships. It's a bit like as if you choose your partner to marry with, right? So choose carefully. Choose people you like to be with. Choose people you like to be with also in difficult situations. So we ended up in many situations with our founders in pressure cooker type of situations. It's not that it's always the nicest sort of circumstances you have to fight your battle together, right? But that's like something you got to be thinking carefully. It's like, that guy who joins my board or my cap table, seems super nice now, right? But like think through the scenarios you have to fight in a life or death type of scenario. You want to have that guy around, right? Or like does that guy turn sour or like it's not helping or whatnot, right? So I think that's a bit of the non-financial side of things. It's a process. It's a going together, and yes, ideally, we'd like to see like a solid execution, right? Meaning that when we look into skills of founding teams, it's a lot of that is software. Obviously, it's engineering. It's a lot of technology, which has been built. So being solid there. Showing that you can sort of deliver on your track is super critical there. It's 90% after you set out your strategy is about execution, right? Which includes to sometimes say, listen, we're not going to get through with what we planned, right? And that's also execution, to say, listen, we just pulled the plug on the plan, and here's a new plan, and here's why we did do the change, right?
Transparent communication and execution. Got it.
Yeah, I think so.
We have 8 minutes. Maybe I will get questions from the audience. I don't see anything right now, but there has been a really massive development in Turkish gaming scene. I think my audience is also really curious about the upcoming question. Any comments for the Turkish industry, like about what's happening? Any tips for the ecosystem to grow bigger, access to funding better, different kind of genres, anything that you can provide or tell us?
I mean, I think where the ecosystem stands right now, it couldn't be in any better shape, right? I mean, obviously you got the halo all over the ecosystem, which is amazing. I think building relations with potential investors and outside of the inner circle ecosystem investors early is key, right? And I'm always thinking, like, when you go to market to sell something at some point, which is if you want to sell sort of your startup equity, right, to investors, it's always good to have been around with the people you want to potentially sell them to, right? So, starting to build sort of the network early with investors that you may think they may not be always endemic or close to the ecosystem yet, but that is something I can only encourage the ecosystem to do very early on, and find a good model of interacting with sort of non-local partners, so to say, in the ecosystems, whether it is platforms, whether it's capital providers, whether it's tool providers, and so on and so forth, right? Just bring this ecosystem and have a good connectivity into other pieces of the jungle.
Connectivity. That's why we are organizing this
event. And that's why I'm so happy to be here and start to interact and learn and put our face out and see on how we can be helpful, right?
Yeah. One question from the audience.
We happily have a very, very strong partner as BITKRAFT in the Turkish ecosystem as our LP. The Sabancı family is a very valued partner of ours, which is obviously helping us a lot with connectivity in the market, as we natively are not an expert in the Turkish market, and we don't claim to be, right? But we feel we have the great connectivity there, and whatever else piece you need to get to, like, it's relatively easy for us given our partnership.
Yeah. One question from the audience: what is the most common characteristics in game studios that you have invested?
Most common characteristics. I mean, I would be a little worried if we had too much common characteristics. We enjoy the diversity a lot, right? We enjoy to see different things, which obviously attack different angles, so to say, but also speak to different potentials, so to say. I mean, what the common denominator really is sort of the quality of the team. We will never compromise. I think that's the one. Like, that's either a team which been delivering something as an entrepreneurial team or as a founding team, so to say, in the past. So I think that if you want to call it track record or proof of execution or work, is something we made exceptions, and we will make exceptions, but it's a smaller type of exceptions. So we obviously tailor more to the teams who've done a lot of the entrepreneurial work before.
Okay, got it. I hope that answered the question, Aycan. Malte, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be connected further. Let me know if there's any questions, follow-ups, interesting teams, business plans. We're always very, very excited to learn great new things and work with upcoming great teams.
Yes, dear audience, we make sure that if you have an interesting idea, concept, game in the ecosystem, you can send a message or a meeting request to Malte. Malte, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. And then good luck with the ongoing show.
Thank you. We are.
Bye bye.
Bye.